Hello, a very good evening to all of you. Thank you very much for joining us again for another wonderful session. And we are a few minutes behind for a reason. It's a different session. It's, of course, a different sharing. So, we do have a special person today. Let me keep that intrigued for you. Right? And with that, I would like to invite Dr. Rohantha, without further ado, to introduce our speaker for the day. All the students and the audience who are joining with us, all our members from the counterpart universities, thank you so much for joining. And we definitely hope that you will have a wonderful experience today with the speaker on board. Dr. Rohantha, over to you. Dr. Rohantha, I believe
Yes.
you are with us.
Hi, I got in again.
All right, so with further ado, we are live now and we are waiting to see who is this special person who is joining us today. So I made it a bit of a curious situation and the viewers are waiting until you give the introduction for the person today.
Thanks, Kaushali. Rolf Blaser is our guest today. He's the managing director, CEO of A.Baur and Company. Rolf has a corporate career spanning 3 decades, including positions at Sony, Minolta, and Johnson & Johnson. He has a bachelor's degree in economics from the Zurich University of Applied Sciences and executive MBA from the University of St. Gallen, Switzerland. With experience in Europe and Southeast Asia, he has a strong cross-cultural competency and brings a passion for operational excellence to every role. Rolf serves as a CEO and alternate director at Baur since 2017 and 18, and he serves as the managing director CEO. I went through his LinkedIn profile, and it's like kind of the exposure he has from Switzerland to right across the world. It's really an honor, sir, to have you here. Over to you.
Yes, so this is none other than Mr. Rolf Blaser. Rolf, thank you so much for joining with us. And do tell us, what is this storytelling is all about?
Thank you so much, Ms. Kajali. Thank you, Dr. Rohantha, for having me here in this session. Also, thank you to the chairman of UPIT for inviting me for this session. I'm honored, and it's also a pleasure for me to be here. Now, storytelling was kind of always following my life, or I was following storytelling. I don't know what was first. But to be honest with you, today I'm not here to lecture you on storytelling, because this is the forum I've learned of meet the CEO. So what I will do is actually I will practice storytelling, and I will then later on ask you about your perception. I have though one slide which is a theoretical slide. When I prepare a story or a presentation or a speech, I normally try to focus on 4 points, and I can tell you this is the last slide with theoretical information, a very short one. First point is 80% of talking or storytelling is body language. So the body language is very important, maybe less important today for this webinar, but I keep this point always on my list to consider when I'm preparing myself for a speech or for a talk. Then the other 3 points I keep in mind when I prepare the content of my story. So the first one is I try to touch the heart of the audience. This is possible when I know the audience in person. It's a little bit more difficult when I don't know the audience personally, but then I try to focus on keep the content relevant to the people listening to me or watching me. Then I try to bring in some new aspects, novel new aspects, which I assume the audience doesn't know about my content, and I try to pack it in such a way that it is easy to memorize. So as I said, I will not talk much about the theory of storytelling, but I will actually use the time to tell you 2 stories. And the first story I'm going to tell you is about my own life, my career, and how I ended up here in Sri Lanka. And the second story is the story of my company in Sri Lanka, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of information there for you, which you might not know today about our company, A.Baur company in Sri Lanka. And at the end, I would be happy to listen to you, whether I can match the expectation and whether I can cover these 3 points, whether I could touch your emotion or explain to you something which is relevant, whether I told you something which is new, and whether you think you can memorize this over the next few days, weeks, or maybe months. So I will dive into my first story, which is a short one, even though the story is actually a long one, my life, but I'm going to tell you the story in one slide only. I'm born and grown up Swiss national. In Switzerland, I went through the very traditional way of education. I went through the schooling system, which took me around 9 years. Now you can see from this picture, this is a government school, but in Switzerland, government schools have a very, very, very high standard, and they can actually match even the private school. And then in Switzerland, we have the concept of the apprenticeship, which is a mix between vocational training. It's a mix between vocational training and a mix between training on the job. So I learned to be a sales representative in an electronic store. That was my apprenticeship. So I'm basically a certified salesman, if you want, which is maybe also the link to the topic of today's webinar of storytelling. So I'm trained to tell you stories. I'm trained to convince people at the end to buy something, in this case, a product. And I figured out storytelling has been part of my life because it's always about selling and telling and convincing other people about your own opinion. So I spent about 4 years in that education and work as a salesman. And then I did something which I think only in Switzerland is possible. I went back to the university and I became an economist from the Zurich University. It took me another 4 years to study back again 100% full-time classes. After that university, I went back to work. I worked for a company called Sony, where I was in several marketing and sales functions. Then again, it took me back to education, and I did another full-time course, which was a 1-year full-time course at the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland to do to do an MBA in media and communication. After which I joined my last job in Switzerland, which was with Johnson & Johnson again in several marketing and sales functions. There, another turn took my life. I made a holiday in India where I met the love of my life, an Indian girl, which I call today my wife. So 1 year later, in 2008, I moved into Bangalore and worked there for a company called the Nuance Group, which is a duty-free travel retailer. So I was running the travel retail stores in Bangalore for about 5 years. Before we decided to go back to Delhi, that's the hometown of my wife. So we went there for family reasons, and in Delhi I joined a company called Safilo. And Safilo is a company doing sunglasses and frames more in the luxury segment. And in that capacity, I did a business travel again to Sri Lanka, where I came in contact with my today employer, A.Baur company, where I'm heading the company since 2008. I joined Bowers in 2007, and in 2008 I became the group CEO of Bowers in Sri Lanka. So when you look at this whole picture, maybe you want to reflect. I guess you would right now be somewhere in this part of my life where I went back to university to become an economist. You can see from my own life, it took so many turns. I can tell you none of them were planned. None of them were preempted. I have the luxury, I had and I still have, to follow my passion. So all these turns is basically a reflection of my passion at that time. And that's the reason my life took so many turns, and that's the reason today I ended up in Sri Lanka, where I fully enjoy myself and my job and my life and my wife. So that will be the end of my personal story, which would lead now into the story or the story of A.Baur & Company, which is commonly known as Baur's. The early history of Baur's is that Mr. Alfred Baur came to Sri Lanka in 1884. At that time it was called Ceylon. And the remarkable part of that event is that he was 19 years old. So I would like to ask you in the audience to just quickly reflect, what did you do when you were 19 years old? Mr. Baur was a true hardcore pioneer. He basically sailed across the oceans. It took him about 4 months to come from Switzerland on a sailing boat via Middle East, landing in Mumbai and sailing down to Sri Lanka to work for a Swiss trading company. He was deployed on a coconut estate in Sri Lanka at the age of 19 years. Then in 1890, he decided to buy a coconut plantation in his personal capacity. And what he did, he was basically becoming a farmer, and he was experimenting with fertilizer. So he figured out if he does apply a special mixture of fertilizer on his coconut plantation, he gets more yields, he gets more coconuts, which made him confident enough another 7 years later in 1897 to start, basically to quit his job, to resign from his job and start his own company, which at that time was called the Ceylon Manure Works, which today is A.Baur & Company. So I think a remarkable journey of Mr. Baur in his very, very young age. Again, maybe a little similar, but obviously I cannot compare with myself. I'm sure it took turns with him which he didn't foresee earlier on. In 1897, when we started the business, we had to bank with an international bank in Sri Lanka because we were importing fertilizer from international markets. And that bank was HSBC Bank, was the only bank in Sri Lanka which was international. Why I'm putting this slide is, today we still bank with HSBC. So we have a 123-year-long relationship with our first bank, HSBC, and we are proud to say we didn't fail one single payment in these 123 years. So I would say we might be one of the best customers of HSBC. In 1899, we joined as a member the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. I'm sure this doesn't need introduction to you. Ceylon Chamber of Commerce has only 27 members, out of which we are one, who have been members for more than 100 years. So we crossed the century actually long back, and there's only 27 members who have been with the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce for more than 100 years. In 1901, Baur's was the first company to use an industrial rail link to basically use the railway to transport fertilizer from the harbor to our factory in Kelenya, and from that factory to transport it further up country to the plantation. So here in this picture you see, this is our private track which we have built, which you can directly load and unload from the stores into the wagon, the heavy fertilizer, and then go onto the public track which you see here. So we were the first one in Sri Lanka to use the railway to commercially transport goods. Unfortunately, the Sri Lankan railway didn't really progress and they ran out of capacity. So today we are back on the road with our fertilizer, but we would love to come back on the rail to transport the fertilizer with rail. In 1901, same year, we also started to give scientific advice to our customers, to our farmers. So what we do is, we go to the farmer, we take a sample of the soil and we analyze the soil and what is missing. And we ask the farmer what he's planning to plant, which crop he's planning to plant. So we know exactly which nutrients, which nutrition we have to give back to that fertilizer, to that soil, to make it most efficient. So therefore we are known that we basically have one of the best performing fertilizers. The reason why is because we look at the soil We ask the farmer what he plants, and then we do a tailor-made fertilizer as per the request. And we go even one step further. We train the farmer on how to apply that fertilizer to keep it most efficient. In 1990, we were the first company in Sri Lanka who would use a tractor in agriculture. It sounds maybe a little bit simple these days, but you can say A.Baur is responsible to mechanize the agriculture industry in Sri Lanka. So we are the first company to ever use a tractor on a farm. In 1941, we completed our head office building at Upper Chatham Street. So this was the first building in Sri Lanka to be shock-proofed. It's the saying goes that Mr. A.Baur was at the pier when the Navy fired some cannon. And we here are on solid ground, on rock. Actually, this building is built on rocky area, so there was a vibration going on. And Mr. A.Baur insisted to build this building in a shock-proof way. He also insisted to have a car park which is underground. So this is the first building in Sri Lanka which has an underground car park. Now, if you look at the picture, here there's a few cars, so not many cars. So it needs a true visionary to think of later on having space constraints, and we have to have a car park underground. Today we are very happy that we have this car park because we don't have space anymore to park our cars. I mind you, in 1941, that was during the Second World War, and Sri Lanka was occupied by the Britishers, and the British Army considered our building the safest place in the country. So they occupied, or you can say they annexed, our ground floor and our basement just after completing the building. And they stayed in our building for about 4 years till the end of the war. You might remember the incidents of 1996, where the LTT terror attack attacked the central bank. We are the immediate neighbors of the central bank. And on that small picture on the right side, you can see what the central bank looked like after the attack. And our building is right outside here, right next to this part. This is the view of our building. What happened to our building is basically we had a few windows and frames pushed inside because of the air pressure of the detonation. We had broken glass on the ground floor and broken glass on the first floor, second floor, and third floor. Other than that, no damage was caused to our building. And I'm very happy to say we only had one person suffering an injury, and the injury came from broken glass falling from the top, and this person had a cut on his head. I'm also happy to say that this person still works for our company. Other than that, we didn't have any casualties. In 1941, just at the end of the war, in Sri Lanka, there was a malaria epidemic. And we imported a product which was the entry into our healthcare business in 1941. The product was basically an insecticide manufactured by a company called J.R. Geigy Ltd. So we used this insecticide to fight the malaria mosquito. J.R. Geigy later on in 1971 did a merger with Ciba and became a company called Ciba Geigy. And Ciba Geigy in 1996 had another merger with a company called Sando, and they become Novartis. And we can say today we have since 1945 an uninterrupted relationship with Novartis or Ciba Geigy or J.R. Geigy, and we are representing this company for the last 75 years without any interruption. In 1957, we brought Swissair, at that time it was called Swissair, to Sri Lanka with a direct flight from Zurich to Colombo. We did for Swissair the ground handling, and we did the sales of the tickets. As you know, in Sri Lanka, the airport is run by the Sri Lankan Airlines. So we would do the supervision at the airport, and we would also be the ticket sales agent. we represent Swissair till date. Today we have a company called Edelweiss, which is 100% daughter of Swissair, or Swiss it's called today. So Edelweiss is normally flying with 2 flights per week to Colombo in other years than 2020. So this flight would still be on, and we are still representing this company in Sri Lanka, and we still do the ground handling. In 1991, we were the first company of HSBC who started electronic banking. At that time, there was not much of internet, so the electronic banking means we have a telephone line, a direct telephone line with the office of HSBC in Sri Lanka, and we basically have an interface where we can do electronic banking, so very early days of electronic banking. This is what our company looks today. These are our fields of activities. So today we are the second largest pharmaceutical distributor in Sri Lanka. We're one of the biggest surgical and diagnostic distributor. We are basically increasing our business in consumer distributor, and we are in several other businesses like textile machineries, like plant protection, animal health, airline travel, and education as well. I will come back to the topic of education later on because it might be of special interest. So if you think now what happened to our fertilizer and our factory in Kelenia, this is our factory. At the top is the 1901, the picture I've seen before, and this is what it looks like today in 2015. So we continuously upgraded and modernized our factory. It's still in the exact same location, and still this railway track is still here. It's going right along the wall of this building. This is our private track, and this commercial track is still here. So it's the exact same location, but we permanently upgraded the factory. And today we can proudly say this is the most high-tech fertilizer factory in Southeast Asia. It's fully automated and computerized. Believe it or not, we are actually using artificial intelligence in our computers in this factory to calculate the mixtures and to calculate the speed of the opening and closing of the gates of the silos to have exact weight in the bags at the end of the day. So this is the fertilizer factory. What we did also, we basically expanded from fertilizer into plant protection. This is all what you need to basically protect your plants from insects or from weedicides or from fungus and so on. And we are also into animal health, where we cater to poultries and cattle farms with nutrition, and in the future also with healthcare products. We are the first company in Sri Lanka to launch a biopesticide. A biopesticide is basically a natural biological weapon against an intruder. And in this case, the intruder is called the fall armyworm. You might have come across 2 years back, we had an epidemic, if you want to say so, by fall armyworms in the maize plantations in Sri Lanka. And we introduced and we got the license, the registration for this product this year to launch the first biopesticides in Sri Lanka to basically fight the pest of the fall armyworm. Now, if you're looking a little bit in the future in terms of innovations, it's obviously a little tricky for me to talk about what we're going to innovate, but I can just give you a basic overview how we're doing it and in which areas we are basically putting our eggs into the basket. One area is the business model. So we are working with my university, if you want so. My university is one of St. Gallen, is the number 5 business universities in Europe, so the top leading university in Europe. And what we're doing, we're looking into business model innovation. So basically, we look at the models we're doing the business in, let's say healthcare, or let's say consumer goods or fertilizer, and we look better at how we can interrupt the model or how we could improve it. And how we do this in a nutshell is, it's a very long project, but how we do it is We try to think, we put ourselves in the shoes of let's say, the CEO of Uber, and then we try to figure out how would he handle the distribution of our products. So he will have a totally different thinking than we have. So we try to basically challenge our own business models. And I can tell you we have right now about 5 to 7 projects in this area where we most probably in the next 12 to 18 months will come out with radical new approaches on how to conduct the business. Another area which we're focusing on is, of course, and I'm not saying this because I'm talking to you today, I'm saying this because I think every CEO in this world has to get familiar with the technologies available. And we are focusing, we're having a deeper look into these 6 technologies, what you see here. This is machine learning, this is artificial intelligence, deep learning, Internet of Things, big data, and blockchain. And those 6 areas are directly linked to the business model innovations, what I shared with you on the upper line. So we see a good potential for one or multiple of these technologies to play an important role in our potential future models. We know there's many more technologies and there's no end to it. We have robotics, we have quantum computing and so on. But right now we're focusing on the 6 with the bigger icons. Another one area where we're focusing on is basically in our operational excellence. And also there we are looking for radical transformation. Unfortunately, I cannot tell you too much, but it has to do with the recruitment, job description, org chart, key performance indicator, and performance management, where we try to apply the category management philosophy in designing the line above, recruitment, job description, org chart, and so on, to basically come from the output point of view and figure out how do we have to lead the category management approach into those more operational, organizational contexts. Now the question is, how can we do all this, or why are we doing all this? It's capital intensive, it's financial intensive. The reason why we do all this is we still follow our founder's heritage, and our founder, was a Swiss national, and we continue to embrace the Swiss value systems. You see on the left side, our mantras are trust and reliability, quality and innovation. And how can we invest in these areas? I think one major difference to many other companies is that we are owned by a charity foundation. So our shareholder, our owner, is a charity foundation, which means Mr. Bauers, before he died, opened that foundation in Geneva, and he gave his entire wealth to the foundation. His wealth at that time was obviously the company, but he was also a collector of artifacts. He was collecting Chinese porcelain, and he was collecting Japanese garments, basically Japanese clothes, kimonos, and he was collecting a little bit of Japanese weapons, the smaller versions of the samurai swords. So he gave all this to the foundation, and this foundation has basically 3 purposes in their own purpose statement, and the 3 goals of the foundations are: first objective is to make sure that our company in Sri Lanka is continuing, is surviving. The second objective of the foundation is to provide enough funds to run the museum where all the artifacts are kept. Now, this museum is owned by the foundation, and the artifacts are owned by the foundation. The maintenance is the only financial resources where they need to spend money, but that's not so much. And then the third objective of the foundation is, as it is a charity foundation, philanthropy, nature, and folklore. So that means donation. In other words, when we earn money in Sri Lanka as our own company and we pay dividends to our owners, to the foundation, they will first pay the salaries of the people in the museum, and whatever is left, they will donate back to the people in need. And the good part, I can tell you, comes actually back to Sri Lanka. So this means the first purpose is the continuation of Baur's, means we are investing in sustainability of the country, of the organization, also of the environment and so on. So that's why we can invest substantial amounts of efforts and funds into research, development, and so on. If you ever happen to be in Geneva, you please go and have a look at our museum. These are some pictures of our museum in Geneva, where you can see some artifacts, what we keep there. I'm not a specialist in artifacts, so I'm just running you through these pictures. There is also quite a big bibliography of the museum, of the company, and also of Mr. Baur's, but most of the books are actually, I can tell you, on the museum and on the artifacts, but there are also books of the company and books of Mr. Baur's pioneer. Now, who is responsible for all this in the last 123 years of Baur's existence? These people you see on the screen here, this is all the former chief executives, and obviously they all had fantastic teams behind them. You can see all of them have been Swiss nationals. Reason why is that the owners think that Swiss nationals are better in keeping up the Swiss value systems. But I can tell you there was also an exemption. My immediate predecessor is Mr. Lakshman Niyangoda. He has been managing director CEO from 2014 and 2018, and I have to admit, he did an absolute fantastic job. I think in terms of Swiss value system, he's maybe more Swiss than many Swiss, or maybe even more Swiss than I am. So nothing to do with nationality, but the owner of the company still feels that the Swiss might be closer to the Swiss value, Swiss system, and the Swiss approach. Now, who is responsible today? This is the board of directors today. I'm proud to show this picture because in this picture you see a lot of experience. If you take myself out, I've been with the company only for 3 years. If you start from the left side, is Mr. Janaka Gunasekara. He is our deputy managing director, and he's also director of agriculture. He has been with us for 31 years. Then we have Nishanta. Nishanta is director healthcare. Nishanta has been with Baur's for 30 years, so that's 3 decades. Then I'm really proud of our gender diversity. We have Pavitra. Pavitra is director of finance. She has been with us for 18 years. Then we have the other lady is Anocha. Anocha has been with us for 12 years and she is director of IT. And you saw before already, our chairman today is our former managing director, is Mr. Lakshman Niyangoda. He has been with us for 37 years. So there's a lot of experience which I can draw from, which makes life for me a little easy because I have a fantastic management behind. And I can tell you, these 4 operational directors have fantastic teams behind them. So I'm coming close to the end of my presentation. This is the second last slide. Here I'm showing the vision of Baur's, which I'm sure has a lot to do with our existence and how we survived over the last 123 years in Sri Lanka. We do want to be a great place to work, so we do want to be a good host for our staff, for our employees. So they should enjoy themselves, they should be proud to work for Baur's, and they should bring in their knowledge and enthusiasm. We want to be a role model, not only for distributing or donating. We want to be a role model to be socially responsible. We want to be a fair partner for our customers. We want to be a fair partner for our suppliers. We want to take care of the environment. We want to be socially responsible and leading from the front. And obviously, as a commercial organization, we have to generate extraordinary value addition for the customers and the suppliers and all other stakeholders. So this leads me to my last slide, which is by chance today, 9th of December, is the death anniversary of our founder, Mr. Alfred Baur. He died on the 9th of December 1951, and he actually left us in 1951, but his legacy will never leave us since 1897. So I thank you for bearing with me and taking part of this presentation. And I would be happy to answer any kind of question if there is any question.
Thank you very much, Rolf. It was a very, very interesting presentation. It's a lot of character, it has a lot of legacy, and it has a lot of innovation that has been built, which makes it very unique. I know that there are a lot of strong, big, innovative concepts that you are currently work on. I'm sure it must be very confidential, but since you have given some light to it, could you share a little bit of your insights on these latest innovations, please?
It's a very, very good question. Puts me a little bit in the spot here. But first of all, thank you for the question. I will tell you in concrete cases how we approach the situation, and I take a very relevant event, which is this COVID event. Now we almost have heard that the vaccine seems to be registered by FDA, by certain governments. It's already permitted in the UK and so on. So we as a healthcare distributor might be in the situation to distribute the vaccine sooner or later. To distribute drugs, some of them are temperature controlled. So I'm raising the topic of the COVID vaccine because it seems that the COVID vaccine, some of them need to be stored at minus 80 degrees. So today there's no vaccine or
Seems like we lost him in the connection. Yes, we'll wait for a while for him to reconnect.
Kaushali, you got how many questions did you come?
I have got, there are 3 platforms, Dr. Rohantha, so I have currently got 11 questions, but I have been able to compile them to be...
Rolf joined?
5.
Yes.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Rolf.
I think somebody removed me from the from the discussion.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
To keep a long story short, this COVID vaccine needs minus 80 degrees in the entire supply chain. Now, to move a product temperature control, number one, you need the box, which is like a cooling box where you put in the drugs. We're already doing that, but today our drugs, some of them, need temperatures between 2 and 8 degrees. But that's a different story. So looking at this, now we are breaking our heads. One is, what is the box going to be like? This is not going to be our job, but we're going to be a part of it. How are we going to transport such kind of products of minus 80 degrees? But where we chip in is, how can we ensure that cold chain is not interrupted? So can we, for example, bring in IoT in combination with blockchain to prove and certify that a cold chain is not interrupted? Doesn't matter whether it's 80 degrees minus or 2 degrees plus, the drugs have to be, many of them have to be temperature controlled, and it's very, very, very important that that temperature is maintained, because otherwise the drug will lose its efficiency. That's an example of what we're thinking. So can we use IoT together with a physical box, together with blockchain, to certify the temperature, that the cold chain was never broken up. Another innovation, what we're going to do right now, is very concrete, and I can tell you it's the first audience we are telling this. We're going to start something totally different. We're going to start Swiss Hotel Management Academy. And in this Swiss Hotel Management Academy, you might know that Switzerland is famous for hotel management education. So what we are doing, what do we bring new to the table is, number one, we take the content from the best school in the world, or one of the best schools in the world, which frequently tops the worldwide rankings of hotel management education. I can tell you this is going to be a hotel management school called EHL, École Hôtelière de Lausanne. So they are giving us the content. So what are we doing with the content? We break it down into smaller pieces, easier to digest for the local requirements. So we will make 6 months modules, because we think in Sri Lanka, the people in the hotel management don't have a 3 years horizon. They don't want to link themselves or commit themselves for 3 years. So we break that course down into modules. It's all in all 12 modules. As per the discipline, every discipline has 3 levels. So we start with an apprentice model, then we have an intermediate model, and then we have a specialist module, which makes you a diploma owner in a discipline. And what we also do, also new, is we're going to apply the Swiss apprenticeship model, which I'm very much convinced is the most efficient way of learning. What it does is you basically sit one day in the classroom for vocational training, then you go to work and you learn on the job, and then you go to work again next day, and then you go to classroom again. So basically it means you learn, you practice and train, you learn, you practice and train. So it's a combination between classroom and on-the-job learning. I can tell you 80% of the Swiss population goes through this concept of learning a profession. Somehow it was not applied in hotel management, so we're going to apply that way of disseminating content and knowledge into students, which we think has the biggest and most efficient learning curve. We're also going to use international faculties, and that's kind of a novum in the Sri Lankan market, and we are planning to start the first pilot in early next year. So we are already lined up, being prepared, and we're getting into the education space.
Rolf, you seem to be very charged on innovation. I mean, where does this appetite come from? I mean, are you? I mean, all your life have you been driving innovation, or is it? How does it go?
Yeah, maybe maybe it's part of our culture. If you go and Google the Swiss the innovation index, you will find Switzerland normally ranking in the top 3 countries in the world: Switzerland, Sweden, USA, and so on. So I think the culture in Switzerland is a innovative kind of culture. But I can also share, I think by coincidence or by passion, I landed up in several companies. One was, for example, the company which invented the sun cream. Many years back, sun cream, that the cream was invented in 1944 by a brand called Pitt Queens. That was the first brand to use a cream instead of a physical block. So instead of a mask or a towel, they used the cream. So I was working for the company, very innovative company. Another company I was working for invented the polarized sunglasses. So that was the brand is called Polaroid, which you might be aware of. So another very innovative kind of a company. But I think that just somehow landed in that spot to drive innovation. And to be honest with you, the level of innovation, the increase in speed will only go up, it will not go down, and it will happen so fast. So I think today, if you don't innovate, you lose out. So we try to keep the speed up to basically just match the markets, because if we don't, then somebody else will.
Yeah, I mean, for me, of course, there are 2 brands that come to my mind when I think of Switzerland. One is, you guys never grow any cocoa, but you make the best chocolates in the world. And second is, of course, Roger Federer. Have you get a chance of meeting Roger Federer?
No, I saw him once. I was sitting in the stadiums, so I was in the audience. So I saw him, but from a distance. So I didn't personally interact with him. but obviously I'm a big fan, and I follow now on TV, and I'm a big fan of Roger, not only because he's playing good tennis, also because of his personality. And despite of becoming such a superstar, I feel when I see and listen to his speeches, he's still very humble in his approach. He's still very grounded, and he's not acting up, which he could. I mean, he's an absolute one of the best sportsmen in the world, maybe next to Malinga. But yes, I love Roger Federer as a sportsman, but also as a character, and I think he's one of the best ambassadors we have for Switzerland.
Last question, Rolf. Before I hand over to Kaushali, how do you bring this innovation spirit into your organization? Because you need a lot of systems, otherwise it doesn't have sustainability.
Yeah, thank you. Interesting. It's a little bit of a challenge, I agree. I think I'm blessed with myself that I'm into that topic. I love innovations, I love the change. If you also look at my first slide, which I showed in my own life, there were a lot of changes. There was a lot of learning and then unlearning. I mean, when I went from Switzerland to India, I think the cultures cannot be more different than between the Swiss culture and the Indian culture. So I had to unlearn first and then relearn. And that's the time when you bring in innovation, when you take from your old world into your new world and you try to adopt. So I try to inculcate the same spirit. But more important, I guess, I try to bring in the DNA into our culture, in our company culture. And it has to be committed. So we have to give resources for innovation, which means resources is manpower, which is time, which is projects, it's also money. So we have to be committed. And one of the most important elements, I guess, is we have to be aware that there will be a lot of failures also. So we have to deal with failures. So failures should be a part of the regular process. How do we deal with the failures? Because when you go into innovations, out of 10 projects, 9 will fail and only 1 will succeed. So how do we deal with failure? That's the elements which I'm trying to bring into our organization and culture.
Thank you, Rolf. And can I pass it to Kaushali?
Yes, indeed. A wonderful session. As I said, I was looking forward to seeing and to hearing this whole serenity and the whole passionate talk from you. Just other than just another CEO or maybe just another person who is taking on the challenges. How do you live your life with all these differences and all these new adventures that is coming on your way? So with so many questions, Rolf, coming about how have you been attending to your personal life changes? I believe this is mostly to do with the cultural transitions that you have faced. So to do fairness to everyone, let me put one question to you so that you will be able to explain it in detail. So can you tell us your secret behind the serenity and the passion you carry as a person despite all these challenges?
I think I'm one of the blessed people in this world who was permitted to follow my passion. To be honest with you, when I was living in Switzerland, I had one of my previous bosses in Switzerland one day told me, Rolf, if you want to make a career, you have to go to Germany. You have to go and lead a big market. If not Germany, then you have to go to UK or France. Otherwise, you will never be on the display of the big managers. And I remember well, I told my boss at that time, see, if it means I have to leave Switzerland to make a career, I would rather choose Switzerland than have career. So if you want to force me into Germany, I don't accept. I'll stay here. And if it means no career, I don't make career. Obviously, I was convinced by my own skills, but I was always in a position and I had the luxury to follow my passion and my heart. And that's also the way how I was brought to India, if you want. I never had India on my map. I didn't even know about India, and I was never interested in Asia as such. But I met my wife, and she ignited the passion in me, and I went to India, and I had such a fantastic time. I spent 10 years in India because I was there for my passion, and the passion was not only my wife, it was also my work, it was also the culture, it was the food, it was the singing and dancing. I'm a big Bollywood lover. I go crazy if you play the top 10 Bollywood songs. So I was also blessed with being allowed to follow my passion. So maybe not everyone has the luxury, but I think that helps a lot. And it might also help if you're not in that situation, just try to like what you do and do what you like.
Thank you very much, Rolf. And I'd like to give the final question to Chairman Bandula.
Hi, Rolf. Good evening, sir.
Hi, Bandula.
Sorry. In fact, I couldn't meet you at the beginning of the session due to purely a technical error. So I have a comment and a question, Rolf. So the comment is basically from a bit side. At the program, our objective is to give first-hand information and interaction for our students to get the top CEOs of Sri Lanka to share their experience and learn upfront. So actually, we are in a position to say that we achieve that objective by inviting you, because I joined halfway when you started the presentation, the lovely presentation, and also the express that whatever the things that are quite important to our students. On behalf of our CEO, Roshane Godage, and the staff, and also the entire board of directors, the students, I would like to say thank you very much for taking your time and expressing that very honestly for the betterment of our,
Yes, you can hear.
Bandula, go ahead.
Yeah, and the betterment of our students' knowledge. So this is the first comment that you want to say, Rolf. So thank you very much for share your time in spite of your busy schedule. That is the first one. So I'm sure Kaushali has a lot of questions, because this session you take into different the direction. So my question I would like to come with you to in the business expansion of your entire business. So I would like to focus you something on acquisition and mergers, because you have been expanded your businesses, I'm sure, with some of the acquisition and mergers. So what is the advice that you are giving to our own students? Because we are thinking of entrepreneurship, we are thinking of business expansion, all these young entrepreneurs. So what is your advice on the acquisition mergers, Rolf, through your experience?
Acquisitions and mergers, I think in the entire business scene, the big questions what we should always ask is, does it add value for someone? Normally we talk about the customer or the consumer. So if you talk about acquiring a company or bringing two companies together, are they better off together or not? And it's not about my company only. So if I only want to take over a company, it's not the point. The point is together are we stronger than we are independently. And most of the time, and maybe I'm talking because I'm owned by a charity foundation, most of the time we look at it very selfish, kind of what's in it for me. That's what we try as last thing to ask. The question is, what is the added value we can bring to the table by taking that action or that merger or that acquisition or that business decision? What is in it for my customer? What is in it for my supplier, for my consumer, and so on? And this we try to ask first, not what is in it for me. And I feel there is a lot of room where we can make decisions successful. So the same applies for acquisitions and mergers.
Thank you very much, Rolf.
Thank you, Rolf. Thank you, Rolf. Just to say the final word from the EPIC side, before we get into the Rohanta. Rolf, we practicing in two things. We believe in building leaders to the nation through EPIC, and also we inspire love for learning. I think we achieve both objectives by listening to you. So thank you very much once again for being with us, Rolf. So I would like to hand over it to Dr. Rohanta to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Bandula.
Thank you very much, Bandula, for organizing this Very interesting session. I mean, it was a totally a different caliber, different texture, and a fantastic opportunity for us to get to know about such a strong company. And I mean, what's memorable is how the building survived the central bank attack. It was very, very nice. So, Kaushali, over to you to do the need. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Yes. So I also just have to add another humongous thank you and thank you so much for giving this opportunity for our students, Rolf, today. In fact, to give that opportunity to connect and to see the other side of the story of you. I'm sure all our students, all our alumni see you as the CEO, as a managing director who's seated in that seat. But today we went beyond that, connecting how your life got you here and what are the challenges and what are the inspirations that inspired you. So I'm sure this will be a very much of a happy session, a motivated session for our students. And on behalf of APIT family, let me again thank you a lot for joining us today. And everyone, that brings us to yet another end of a wonderful session of the series of meeting a CEO from APIT Corner. So we hope and pray that we will be having a wonderful opportunity to meet you back again in campus when our students are back in the premises. And with that hope, we say good night for the day.